With the new league year looming, the Chargers have some major decisions to make on their biggest cap hits, but the good news is that reportedly, multiple teams have interest in star pass rusher Khalil Mack.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, to the everydayers out there making us your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, there's some rumors that are swirling around that there are some teams that are interested in potentially acquiring Khalil Mack. And after the season that he just had, it's no surprise to me. And if the Chargers do move on from Khalil Mack, can Joey Bosa regain that top 10 edge rusher form? I'm really curious to see that. It's going to be a big part of the Chargers' success on defense. And are the Chargers' cap issues overblown?
Yeah, I mean, this is buy or sell. We are getting into the biggest Chargers storylines and overreactions as we do every single Tuesday. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. David, one of the things that has been kind of buzzing around, according to Jeremy Fowler, is the interest surrounding Khalil Mack. He was on SportsCenter over the weekend, and he said Khalil Mack, quote, is one in particular I know multiple teams have spoken to, have an eye on. He had 17 sacks a year ago, huge cap hit, and can save 20 plus million on their cap if they were to trade or move on. Maybe there's a trade possibility for a team in need of a pass rusher, and there will be many in that market around free agency. And David, we know the Chargers have very tough decisions to make, especially with Joey Bosa versus Khalil Mack, because you have age, right, and potentially declining production, but he's also been your best player over the last 2 years. And then you have a younger guy with Joey Bosa, more years on the contract, more flexibility, but can't stay on the field. So it is a tough decision. But if the Chargers can get some interest in the trade market, that changes things a little bit, because you could potentially get some return on that, right? Instead of just flat out releasing Khalil Mack, which feels likely given that the new league year starts on March 13th. The Chargers are way under the cap still at this moment. How much kind of credence? Yeah, way over at this point. How much credence are you putting into a report like this? Do you feel like this makes it feel more likely that a trade gets done?
I do. I feel like this is a move that is probably going to end up happening for the Chargers. Just looking at the landscape.
Do you think he is traded?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, interesting.
I think that he's going to get traded, as much as I don't want to see it, because like you said, I mean, he was one of the best Chargers the last couple of seasons. Last year in particular, he was spectacular. 74 tackles, 21 tackles for loss, 17 sacks, including 6 in one game against the Raiders, 5 forced fumbles, 22 QB hits. He was an extremely good leader for the Chargers, a guy that was taking players out, organizing team dinners, trying to get guys together. Was an enforcer out there, was excellent against the run. Pretty much everything that you kind of envisioned for a prime Khalil Mack, you got that last year. And so my sales pitch is exactly all the things that I just mentioned. If you want to get yourself a leader, if you guys want to get yourself a physical dominating force, go trade for Khalil Mack. And I don't think it would be bad business. I know he's in his 30s now, but that production doesn't seem like it's going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, just had his birthday, just turned 33 years old. But yeah, he had 17 sacks last year. The hard thing is he's only under contract for this year, right? It's a 1-year rental, which I think at his age doesn't necessarily work against him. I think the problem is the leverage that the Chargers have. With the new league year starting March 13th, with the Chargers currently still $25 million over the cap, can you get a team to believe that you're not just going to release him anyways? And I think that's really the biggest part here. Part of the reason why I still kind of find it a little bit hard to believe that he does get traded, I think if you can get anything for him, right, and you have it close between who you're going to keep, because it's like, okay, getting a 5th-round pick for Khalil Mack doesn't necessarily mean it's the right choice as opposed to moving on from Joey Bosa, right? But if it's close and that's the tiebreaker, is getting something back while also alleviating some cap, I think you do it, obviously, and get whatever you can in return. Because I do think you have to kind of set yourself up for disappointment a little bit on what the return is going to be. With the leverage situation, I don't think you're going to get very much back for him. But if you're going to get rid of him anyways, get whatever you can, right? And that the other part of this that's just risky is just trading him means that you are likely retaining Joey Bosa and putting a lot of stock into someone who has been very injured to line up across from Tuli Tuipulotu. So I think it's still tough because I don't think they have a ton of leverage. But they could get creative with it, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later in the show when we talk about if Keenan Allen will get extended before the new year. Because if the Chargers can get themselves under the cap, which they have to by March 13th, that's such an important date here, then they could kind of hang Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa out there as trade bait and say, look, we got under the cap. We were able to keep both of them. We could just take both of them and keep them and figure out other ways to, work around the salary.
Give yourself more leverage, yeah.
That's what gives you the leverage there. But speaking of Joey Bosa, we did hear from him and get his first public comments on Jim Harbaugh, and it was very interesting to hear what he had to say. This was the biggest thing I took away was just he's excited. It kind of seems like he may be, feeling like he's going to stay with the Chargers this year based on what his comments were. And it also seemed like he might be throwing a little bit of shade at Brandon Staley.
Yeah, it definitely does. He said, great first impressions. I have a lot of confidence in him and the staff that he brings around him. And he also said, I think it seems like he's a really genuine guy, which you don't find a lot in coaches all the time. He's interesting. He loves football more than anything. And, like you and I were talking before the show here, that definitely does seem like he's digging or taking or throwing a little shot over at former head coach Brandon Staley. And, obviously we saw some reports that came out that kind of indicated that Brandon Staley had some favorites, and he also kind of did things a little bit differently. And, maybe that Joey Bosa is throwing a not so subtle hint out there on his former head coach.
Yeah, he also just kind of was talking like, hey, I'm going to get to know him a little bit more throughout the season. And although he did give great commendations to what the staff is that Jim Harbaugh has been able to bring in, he also wanted to pump the brakes on people always talking about the Super Bowl with the Chargers, which I think a lot of fans can relate to because it's like, hey, it's time to be about it, not just talk about it.
Yeah,
right? The Chargers
definitely.
have always been hyped up every year. It's like, hey, can the Chargers make it this year? And they
Yeah.
inevitably underachieve and don't do what you think they could, right? And that's been the big thing. But it is funny, too, hearing him say, they made amends over their Ohio State-Michigan beef because, those two schools hate each other as much as any two schools in college football, pretty much. So
Yeah.
It was nice hearing him talk about the staff a little bit. Doesn't want to hear about the Super Bowl hype. And I think, to me, David, the part that makes me think it's a little bit about Brandon Staley. I know there was rumors about him potentially punching a wall after a game, getting super upset with the defensive coaching staff and potentially Brandon Staley, and that's why when he was eating that Raisin Bran, he had a little cast on his hand. Could have been from anything, right? But the thing that kind of gives that a little bit more life to me is just it never really seemed like Bosa and Staley clicked. And I think you could say, hey, well, he was never really on the field, so how could you know? But it just, he brought in Khalil Mack. The way he talked about Khalil Mack was just like, Khalil Mack is what you should be. You should always
Khalil
be
Mack
like
is
Khalil
God.
Mack.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it goes towards, Brandon Staley alienating some of the players, not telling players happy birthday and stuff like that. It just never felt like, to me, Joey Bosa was fully sold. But it definitely, the way he was talking made it seem like he feels like he's part of the Chargers' future plans, which, when we did the stay or go defensively, I had Joey Bosa as a higher percent chance to stay. And to me, that it still feels that way. It feels like, to me, Joey Bosa has a more likely chance to stay than Khalil Mack, which I think is absolutely going to make some fans go crazy.
I get it. Trust me. I totally understand it. Khalil Mack's been on the field. He's been productive. With Joey, it's just been all the potential. You just haven't
it's not
seen
necessarily what we would do either, right? It's just
it's not.
the feeling of what I think is going to happen.
No, for sure. I totally understand it. And also, Joey is cheaper, and also it would be a lot more dead cap as well.
And
if
more
you're gonna keep
flexibility
him.
with this contract, too.
Yeah. And so I find it unlikely, although I'm not really a big fan of him staying because I'm tired of watching him on the sideline. I'm tired of watching him deal with all the injuries and never being able to put together a full season worth of Joey Bosa because that's what we all want. That's what we all want to see.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened in 3 years.
And then by doing that, you're just putting such a crazy stock into Joey Bosa. And maybe with Ben Herbert, you feel better about it, right? Maybe with this new regime, you feel like he could stay healthier. But it's a lot of injuries that have piled up for him. And I think the question at this point is, can he return to his once dominant form? Because he was, no doubt about it, legitimate top 10 edge rusher. And you can't say that anymore because he hasn't been on the field. But can he get back to that? We have that and so much more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. I do want to tell you guys, though, that this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. It can be easy to ignore our social battery and spread ourselves thin, especially with social gatherings picking up after the winter. What's the right amount of socializing for you, and how do you recharge? Maybe you thrive around people, or maybe you need some more alone time. Therapy can give you the self-awareness to build a social life that doesn't drain your battery. I have a lot of problems with this, especially trying to hang out with family. Luckily, I'm so happy that most of my family lives in San Diego and I have them around. But there's also a lot of pressure, too, to give everyone time and to keep those relationships going. And it's nice to have somebody that's unbiased, that can see things clearly to help you prioritize what is going to make you feel like you're getting the most out of your day. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. The best thing about it is it's so flexible. It's entirely online. You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to use any gas money. You can do it right from your home, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. David, let's continue this Chargers buy or sell here with something that is very important if the Chargers decide to go in the direction where they trade Khalil Mack and they're able to recoup some assets for that after spending a second and a fifth round pick on him originally. Now you have a situation where you're putting a lot of stock in Joey Bosa. And I think we've, said for so long, hey, if Joey Bosa can stay healthy, he's still so good. And I still believe that. But now you're at the point where, he's missed like over a full season over the last couple of seasons, and those ifs are just getting so much bigger, and you just wonder what the toll of those injuries are going to take on his body, even when he can be on the field, even as a younger player, right? A dude that's 4 years younger than Khalil Mack is at this point. So this is the buy or sell today. Joey Bosa can be a top 10 edge rusher again.
I'm going to sell it, and I'm selling it because I just think the culmination of all of the injuries have done too much of a number on Joey Bosa's body. And I think they've been significant injuries that have really, I think, as much as he's tried to have surgeries to have them corrected, I don't think he's ever been back to, his 2016 form, 2017 form when he first came into the league. It's just something that's really, really hard for me to grasp, thinking that he's only played in 14 of the last 34 games the last 2 seasons.
Sheesh.
It's just so many missed games. And, if we're talking top 10 here, top 10 edge rusher last year, the 10th most sacks in the league was George Karlaftis at 13.5. Joey Bosa has never eclipsed 13 sacks in his NFL career, not a single time. And obviously, I know it's not all about sacks. Trust me, I'm well aware of that. There's a lot more elements to playing defensive end and being dominant than just sacks. But you got to be on the field in order for you to be able to put up those stats consistently. And I'm at a point now where you're going to have to prove it to me before I can buy stock in Joey Bosa again.
And that's why I would sell it too. And the biggest thing is just I don't think that he is a lock to play enough games to be considered for it, right? I mean, yeah, like you talked about, the most sacks he's ever had is 12.5, and that was all the way back in 2017. He's only hit double-digit sacks once in his last 4 seasons. When he's been on the field, he's still been good. Like that's the thing I think is a little underrated. I think people, probably discount his play too much when he was on the field because I still think he's an above-average run defender. But like you start looking at these edge rushers that are out there, right? T.J. Watt, Micah Parsons, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, Danielle Hunter, Nick Bosa, Trey Hendrickson. Like,
they're posting.
Where does he fit in? I mean, he hasn't even been the best edge rusher on his team the last 2 seasons. And that's partially because he, hasn't been able to be on the field. But even if he played all 17 games, what are the chances he would have got 17 sacks last year, like what Khalil Mack was able to do, right? He's
Feels
never
unlikely.
even sniffed it. He's never sniffed it.
Yeah.
The hard thing is productivity-wise, he's not that far away from, like, still being really elite player. I mean, according to Pro Football Focus, his pass rush win percentage last year was 21st, right? But in 2022, 2nd. 2021, 6th. 1st in 2020, right? As far as beating the man in front of you on a consistent basis, he's right there with the best of them. But can he stay on the field enough to really garner that attention, garner the praise of being a top 10 edge rusher when so many guys have stayed healthy and have passed him by, which is part of the reason, we would like Khalil Mack to return just because of how well he played last year and just the uncertainty around him. But the only reason we're even bringing up the Joey Bosa comments is because he was talking before his pistachio eating contest. It was the Get Crackin' Wonderful Pistachio Eating Contest is why he was making the media rounds, because you don't hear him talking very often. And one of the things that came out was him saying basically that all he wants for Joey Bosa is to win this pistachio contest and something else. And some people took that seriously. So the buy or sell here today, David, is Jim Harbaugh really said all he wants from Joey Bosa was for him to win the pistachio eating contest that happened on Monday, which he lost, by the way.
Oh, you better believe it. You know
he did it. You think he said it?
Absolutely, he said it. No question. I don't care. This is probably what he said to him, too. I don't care if you've never eaten professionally in your life.
Sure.
You're representing the Bolts. You better take home this win. It just seems like something that Jim Harbaugh would totally say, and you could 100% believe it, because what's one of the first things that you think of when you think of Jim Harbaugh?
Pistachios.
This guy is a quirky guy. He's different. He says some crazy, outlandish things. I can definitely believe that this is something that actually came out of his mouth.
The thing is, the reason it's a conversation, because, I mean, some people, this is what he said, Joey, the only thing I need from you this year, according to Joey, is to win this pistachio contest. I don't care if you get another sack, which he's weird enough to say. So that's why it's even a conversation. But some people said, well, if you really said that to him, that means he's gone. Because if that's all he wants from him, that means he's getting released, he's getting traded. But the thing is, he said he talked to him a few weeks ago, which is probably right around when he got hired. They met at the facility, talked for 30 minutes to an hour. Had all these conversations. I don't know if the pistachio contest got brought up in that conversation. Also, Joey Bosa has such a dry sense of humor where, when you see him on SportsCenter saying, like, the only thing he wants from me is to win this pistachio eating contest is something that Joey Bosa would just say. That's his type of sense of humor. Very dry.
Of course, yeah.
He did get 7th place out of 8 contestants that I saw. He ate 152 pistachios in 8 minutes, which I think is still pretty commendable. The winner ate 338 in 8 minutes, so
Jesus.
Was not close to winning. He was only 15 behind Joey Chestnut, who he was making the media rounds with. But I also want to tell Wonderful Pistachio that I'm also willing to be endorsed and to take part in any future pistachio eating contest as well, and give myself.
You want that glorious beard to be representing your brand.
Yeah, I feel like my teeth are honestly thinking about eating 338 pistachios. It's crazy. But let's get to the next buy or sell here, which is this. Chargers have a lot of decisions to make. Obviously, one of the things we've talked about potentially happening and maybe probably happening is Keenan Allen getting an extension. But when will it get done? So the buy or sell is this. Keenan Allen will have an extension done before the start of the new league year, which starts on March 13th. Yeah,
I'm buying it. I think it's going to be something that's going to be kind of essential to the Chargers getting under the cap. And also just, as I've always said, I feel like Keenan Allen is a guy that should retire as a Charger, deserves to retire as a Charger. All of the work that he's put in, he has 1,000-yard seasons, or 5 seasons over 100-plus catches. 2 of his last 3 seasons, he's caught over 100 balls and 1,100 yards receiving in 2 of the last 3 seasons. So I feel like extending him is a no-brainer. It's got to happen. The Chargers are going to do it, and it's something that's going to help them later on down the line.
Yeah, you brought up an article that Jason Reed had put from this offseason from Bolt Beat, which had them potentially giving him a 2-year extension, which could free up, $12.5 million, which is a good chunk of that $25 million you're currently over, according to overthecap.com.
Yeah.
So if you could save that, I think you do it because he's playing so well, like you brought up, right? Because he just set the franchise record for receptions and missed 4 games last year. That's how insanely he was playing. That's the rate he was going. The other side of this is it gives you more flexibility, because we talked about Khalil Mack and potentially having to get that done by March 13th. If you cut Mike Williams and you extend Keenan Allen, you can get under the cap by March 13th.
Right there. Those 2
and
moves.
What that lets you do is that lets you hang Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack out there as trade bait. It gives you more leverage, and you can wait till after free agency if you wanted to. You can wait till teams see if they go and can shop for the guy that they want to get. You have it more around draft day, where teams are more likely to potentially separate with some of those picks. So that's why I'll buy it, because it gives them that flexibility. We know basically 2 big moves are going to have to happen. There's not one big move that's going to do it. They could straight up release Khalil Mack and Eric Kendricks and Morgan Fox and get under and do it like that, and they'd still have some flexibility. But you pretty much know Mike Williams is going to be gone at this point, at least in my eyes. Do that, extend Keenan Allen, give yourself that flexibility to where you can give yourself more leverage and potentially get something back, even though one of those edge rushers is still likely going to go. So I think it could get done before the league year. I think it's one of the easiest ways for the Chargers to save a chunk, and also you're re-signing a really good player. This is the thing not enough people talk about, David. After 2024, the only receivers the Chargers have under contract right now are Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis, and that's it.
That's it.
So when people are wondering, yesterday we were talking about Malik Neighbors, we don't need a wide receiver. There's 2 dudes under contract in 2025. What are we talking about? One of them, half the fan base, maybe more, is calling him a bust. So that room is really, really thin, assuming Mike Williams is gone, with Keenan Allen going into the last year of his contract, with Josh Palmer going into the last year of his contract. That move needs to be addressed, and it's better to do it a year early than a year too late, where next year you might have to force yourself into taking a receiver in the first round. If you're potentially even picking, later, much later than you are this year, potentially, you put yourself in a really bad spot. So I think getting that extension done is one of the easier ways the Chargers can give themselves more flexibility, get under the salary cap when the new league year starts. But we have more to get into, including if the cap issues are actually overblown, because a lot of people are talking about it, saying it's kind of a death sentence, and I don't think it is. So we're getting into that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. I do want to tell you guys, though, that you guys can be getting buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Go find the bet that you think is a lock, put your $5 on it, and you can win $150 to play with, which would be great timing because the NBA is in full swing right now, and you can bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. I feel like the live same-game parlays are great because basketball is such a game of runs, and things can happen so quickly that you actually want to see kind of the vibe of the game, the flow of the game, before you want to place those bets, and you get that live betting with FanDuel. The other great thing is March Madness is right around the corner, and that is one of the best, if not the best times of the year to bet on sports because it's just games all day, every day, multiple days. It's madness. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. David, let's continue this buy or sell because we have more to get into, especially with the Chargers cap situation and maybe it being potentially a little bit overblown. Because if you look at it, this year could be tough, but things are really going to open up. It's not something that is going to be killing the Chargers for years and years to come. But I do want to tell you guys to make sure you're checking out the first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today, where you get the local insight from the local experts covering their team in those local markets every day, the way that only Locked On can. So make sure you guys go subscribe to the first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel. Dave, let's get to this buy or sell because the cap issues, obviously the huge thing that's looming over the Chargers this offseason. But I do think, especially with where the new cap number is, I think it's a little overblown. So I'm going to buy it, but the buy or sell is this. The Chargers cap issues are overblown.
Absolutely, I'm buying it. The New Orleans Saints are over the salary cap every single season.
That's what they
Literally
do.
every season. And guess what? They always manage to get under the salary cap every year. Also, the Chargers can really only need to make a couple of moves to get under the salary cap. And also, turning over the roster and letting players go is a part of every NFL offseason. So these are things that you're going to see all the time. I think it's definitely overblown.
Yeah, I think what you hope is that you're not pigeonholing yourself into having to cut good players. Right? Which is what the Chargers feel like they have to do this offseason because of how many big cap hits they have, where we've talked about it. 2 of these guys are more than likely gone because of the situation they set up for themselves, and partially I think it's because it was a really important season for Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley to try to save their job, so they put a bunch of money from last year into this year, and the Chargers are paying for it now. It really is only 1 year, though. That's the thing that I think is so overblown. You want to know how much cap space the Chargers have in 2025?
Like $115 million.
$112 million in cap space, and that's including Justin Herbert's contract. It's not including Keenan Allen getting an extension and then moving some money around there. They also have to extend Rashawn Slater because he absolutely deserves it, and now he's eligible this offseason. That should get done. If not, his 5th-year option is a guaranteed to get picked up. But it's 1 year. So to me, it basically comes down to this. Can you stay competitive in 2024 and just make it to greener pastures? And I think the thing is, like you said, guys come in and out. How many guys do you really want to retain? We're going to talk about that because the Chargers do have a lot of internal free agents. And there's not a ton of likelihood, but I do think, hey, make it through this year. And you've already seen with that cap being raised to $255.4 million, it's going to be a lot easier to get under this year. you're going to give yourself some flexibility. How much just depends on how much the Chargers are willing to let go, how much space they're going to clear up. But it's really hard to, not knowing how much space they're going to have, know which of their free agents that are about to leave could potentially be back. And so there's a few guys we could have gone with for this one, but this was the best buy or sell for me, which is Alohi Gilman is the most likely impending free agent to re-sign with the team.
Yeah, I'm going to buy that. I think of the crop of free agents, I think he had the best year, and I think it really wasn't too close. 71 tackles, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 interceptions, an 89.2 coverage grade, a 75.2 run defense grade, only allowed 3 touchdowns, and he's also played in 14-plus games in 3 of the past 4 seasons. So for Alohi Gilman, I think this was a year he put it all together. I feel like he showed his worth. It seemed like he was really around the football. And I think, honestly, he single-handedly won a couple of games for the Chargers with the turnovers that he was able to create. So I think of all of the other players, I do feel like Alohi Gilman is the most likely of the free agents to be retained.
I'd buy that because he played well, and he's also projected to be pretty cheap. Pro Football Focus has him at a 1-year, $2.67 million contract, which I think he could definitely get more than that. I think the 6th-round pick bias is definitely following him, as it does to all players, which makes it cheaper, right? It's why Morgan Fox, after having a really good pass rushing season in 2022, was able to come back on the cheap in 2023. And also, are you going to let another dude have a breakout and then leave, even when it doesn't cost much? Because guess who else didn't cost that much? Drew Tranquill, Kazir White. Guys you let go. Even Uchenna Nwosu, I think he made about $10 million, which for an edge rusher is way, way less than what you're seeing at the top of that market, right? Having guys and grooming guys to let them have their best season and then letting them walk, even when Drew Tranquill is signing a tiny contract. And how'd that work out for the Chargers defense this year? Not great. I was surprised to see that Alohi is also Pro Football Focus's 137th ranked free agent. He's their 12th ranked safety, which is crazy considering not even out of all the free agent safeties, out of all safeties, he was the 7th ranked safety by PFF last year. So that's a little funny. The thing that I think could get in the way, a couple of former Ravens, Geno Stone and Deshaun Elliott, are both going to be free agents. Both of them played under Jesse Minter, the Chargers' new defensive coordinator, in 2020 with the Ravens. Also have ties to Joe Ortiz and the rest of the, Ravens staff that's been taken from them, for lack of a better term, been poached from them.
Oh, yeah.
Vultured even. So that's the thing I can see getting in the way with that. Since they do have these openings, could they try to fill them with players that they know maybe fit the system a little bit better, right? That know the schemes a little bit better. It'll be interesting to see. But Jesse Minter was those guys' defensive backs coach in 2020. So the ties are there. It'll be interesting to see how they go about it. So we know Alohi Gilman is potentially the most likely to resign. But I do think, David, there's a non-zero chance the Chargers will not re-sign any of their impending free agents. When you're trying to turn over a roster, especially with a new regime, you kind of have to let some people go so you can fill them with guys that more fit the mold that you like them to play with, right? So this last buy or sell we'll get to quickly is this. The Chargers will not re-sign any of their impending unrestricted free agents.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it because I do think there is a chance that they'll bring back Alohi Gilman. Just looking at the state of the safety position for the Chargers, it's basically Derwin James, and then who knows who else. I mean, JT Woods is on the roster, but couldn't even crack the field. So just looking at that position group, I think some continuity, and like you said, the contract not being that expensive, I think there's a chance that he stays.
I think there is too. So I guess I would sell it. But it's not that crazy because, I don't feel like Austin Eckler's coming back. Gerald Everett isn't a true fit, even though you like this play style. Alohi Gilman, is his fit next to Derwin James long-term what you want, right? Michael Davis, no, I don't think there's any chance he's coming back. Maybe one of the smaller names, right? The Josh Kellys, the Easton Sticks, the Will Clapps, the Alex Ericksons. So I'm going to sell it because, it's pretty unprecedented when you have that many internal free agents to not re-sign any of them.
Right.
But it's not impossible, which is crazy. New regime, a new era in Los Angeles. There's definitely a chance we see pretty much, if not all of these guys on a different team in 2024. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. To make sure you guys are back here tomorrow, go subscribe or follow for free on the Lockdown Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, because tomorrow we're getting Joe Ortiz, the new general manager's draft thoughts from the NFL Combine, and also Justin Herbert talking with his old friend Chase Daniel, giving his first public comments since Jim Harbaugh was hired as the Chargers coach. lots of good stuff coming up tomorrow. And you can also find the show every day on our social media. You can follow me on Twitter at DanTalkSports, David at DroTalkSD, and the show's page at Locked On LAC. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We post the show to all of those places every single day. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for Joe Ortiz's comments about the draft and also Justin Herbert's first public comments since Jim Harbaugh is now his new head coach. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.